gentlemen. I'm Jimmy Equalizer. This is Blootrax Radio. We are live in 5, 4, 3, 2. And I'm with Brian Viziondanz of the Luminopolis Corporation organisation, who put on an event. How often do you put your event on?
Yeah, well, it's not me. It's a collective of really committed, powerful, creative people. And I'm just one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do about 4 events a year.
Okay. And the reason why I've invited you to the studio was really, it was triggered by events that took place last weekend at the SE1, formerly known as the Drone, an event called Ding Dong. And I personally had my credit card scanned on the door so that I could go in. 150 people got turned away because they didn't have or weren't prepared to hand over their details.
I heard it was 300.
Maybe it was.
Yeah.
All sorts of figures were flying around. By the end of the night it probably increased.
Yeah, I think
We actually left around 2 a.m. because the energy in the party was pretty low, due to the fact that you can't smoke, due to the fact that security were going through the dance floor, having a go at all kinds of people. They weren't leaving people alone. And to go outside and smoke, you had to put your fingerprint in and out of the building. On your way in and on your way out, you had to put a fingerprint. So this just kind of, for me personally, added an awful lot of negative energy to my experience. And then when I got speaking to all my friends, we collectively decided to leave at the same time at around 2 a.m. And we went to Scott Party in Battersea, which was being put on by Invasion, which was actually very good because it was a bit like going back to the old school, where we could smoke in clubs and we didn't need ID to get in. What are your views on the system and how it affects us as ravers?
Well, personally, I actually enjoy the fact that we can't smoke from the clubs anymore.
Yes.
Because I don't smoke anymore. I stopped smoking about 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I feel a lot better for it. In many ways, I feel like I got my life back.
Yeah.
And before the smoking ban came in, and I didn't really enjoy the atmosphere at the parties because I felt like it's very toxic, and I could really feel it. And because of not smoking all the time, I was really aware of how toxic smoke was. So I'm quite glad. I think it's the only thing the government ever did right in my whole life, I think, is from my point of view. I know a lot of people don't like that.
Do you not think that in some way it's taken away part of the energy of the parties then?
It's changed the dynamic of the party.
I mean, not being able to, I mean, cigarettes, I agree. I don't like, I'm a smoker, and I don't like standing next to people smoking. So I can imagine for someone who doesn't smoke, it's awful. But not being able to discreetly sit down in a corner and roll up a reefer and go on the dance floor and smoke it, that for me is a very big part of the party.
Yeah, but you know, there are many ways to get high, right? If you want to do that, I mean, I think to actually eat a bit of marijuana is a lot nicer way of getting high, if that's what you want to be doing. It lasts longer. It's a better high. You know, it doesn't involve all the paranoia of smoking and da 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 da. So if that's your thing, I would recommend eating it rather than smoking it, really.
And you think, and what about your thoughts on the actual system that they're employing?
The ID system.
Yeah.
Well, I know that the thumbprints for the smoking is not about ID. It's about being able to see it's about keeping track of who's paid to go in,
yeah,
and who hasn't. I don't think that's part of the ID thing. The ID thing came into. I feel really sorry for the guys that run SE1 Club because they're good guys. They work with us. You know, they're very, very helpful. They give us a good price.
Yeah.
And they're very cooperative with what we want to do there.
Okay.
But this has been put on them by the authorities because of the killing that happened there.
Yeah, there was an organised killing, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
well, we don't know that it was organised, but it's assumed that it was an organised killing. And so it's a system that the authorities would want to bring into Clubland, the ID system, and they've chosen the SE1 Club as the first place to do it. It is, I think, going to happen everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people.
I mean, I don't really think it's something that's going to go away very quickly because we're in these times, and like it or not, that's just the weather system of our times.
And do you think, in some respects, that the blessings, there's always blessings to these things, One of them could be that it will push the scene to find alternative ways of expressing itself.
Well, possibly. I mean, you see, I don't have a problem with. I personally don't mind my ID being taken.
You've got nothing to hide.
I've got nothing to hide.
Yeah.
No. And I don't have a paranoia about it, because I figure there's a certain chemistry of physics to life, metaphysics to life, that when it's your time for anything to happen, it'll happen. If it's death, if it's imprisonment, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, it's like we're creating our reality by who we are.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we create our protection, and we also create our nightmares.
Right.
And so I think running away from having my ID known. I mean, I'm quite outspoken. I'm out there, in the big wide world with my crazy ideas and my radical ideas, and if the authorities want to know where I am, they'll know where I am. So I've got nothing to fear. And I think really, these days, it's very, I would say it's virtually impossible for them to live in this society and not be known.
Certainly in this society, I agree, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you've got a choice: you're going to live underground in a cave and be afraid all the time, or just get on with it. Just get on with it. That's my feeling. But then again, I'm a little older than a lot of the people. A lot older than a lot of the people on the scene. So, I've gone through different phases of my life. And
Talk a little bit about that.
In my 20s, I may have been a lot more rebellious than I am now.
Yeah.
And I have been. I mean, I've just rebelled for the hell of it.
Well,
I grew up with very authoritarian parents and in extremely authoritarian times. Not as sophisticatedly, if that's a word, authoritarian, because it was the 50s. We didn't have these technologies. But the attitudes.
But it was very strict.
Very strict.
There was still a lot of Victorian-esque values going around there.
Totally. I mean, you think it's not free. In many ways, it's much freer now than it was back then.
In many ways, yes.
I mean, we could play music on the streets and not get busted and stuff like that. But there was a cloud, in this country anyway, there was a shroud, where everyone, if you look back at the movies of those times, or the pictures of how people looked in those times, it was very narrow. People were very narrow. They weren't very colourful, very self-expressive. Yeah. And it was just after the war and all of the traumas and dramas that people went through then also. So I think it's a much better world now in so many ways than it was then. Yeah, I mean, I see, just on the level of male-female relationships, how much less crap there is going on between men and women. That men and women can relate to each other as human beings rather than having this big game plan going on all the time in the way, which we had. I mean, you look at the old movies, the old carry-on movies and the old comedies, and just see how much, humour is always an indicator of where our repression lies. Because when we challenge the repression, we laugh, right? So look how much there was around male-female relationships. That's not there anymore.
No.
And you look at that and you go, what was that all about?
Yeah.
So I think it's a much better world in many, many ways. But there is a war going on.
Yeah.
I mean,
many.
Yeah. We don't like it. It's not what any of us want, but it is a reality.
That's right.
And so in the war psyche, there is a lot of different aspects where that comes into our lives, and I think the ID mentality is part of that.
Yeah, I'd agree, definitely. Yeah. And do you feel that the scene itself, on the whole, let's take for example Luminopolis, or any of the other trance events that are happening in London at the moment, Invasion, Acid Monkey, there's quite a few now.
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day of Megatripolis, Return to the Source, Club Alien, Negadog, I mean, that's pretty much all there was in those days. Do you think the fragmentation of the scene has dispersed the energy of the scene? Do you think there's a lack of enthusiasm on the scene now as compared to, say, 10 years ago?
I think the scene's ready for something new. I think it needs to we need to reinvent what we're doing.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we're very much, the Luminopolis event, the Synergy project, was very much the cutting edge.
Yeah.
But then, people see that and they replicate it. And so, okay, what are we going to do now?
What's the web address for the Luminopolis event?
Luminopolis.org.
Luminopolis.org, just for the listeners.
I actually don't know. It could be luminopolis.co.uk, but
well,
if you search for
just
Luminopolis.
Google Luminopolis.
Yeah.
Or Facebook it.
I can't believe I don't know what that is. I think it's luminopolis.org. But anyway, and luminopolis means city of light.
Right, okay, yeah. Okay.
And so,
Polis being city.
Yeah.
Yeah. The same with Megatripolis, it was 3 cities, wasn't it? Megacity, Tri-City and Policity.
Oh, I don't know.
Was what I was told by Fraser.
Yeah.
The late Fraser Clark.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit about your relationship with Fraser?
I had a very interesting relationship with Fraser.
Just move the cup off the shadow of your face, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I had a very interesting relationship with Fraser. We met. Well, I remember the first time I met him. I went to the Warp Experience at the what is now SE1 Club.
Yeah.
Then it was the Drome, and the Drome was a club that happened at weekends.
Okay.
And it was a car park during the week. In fact, I remember one time falling asleep at one of the gigs.
I remember it very well myself.
Yeah, I fell asleep in heaven.
Yeah.
In all this amazing music and decor.
Woke up in a car
I woke
park.
up in a car park like a street person. It was a hell of a shock.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those days well.
And it was raw, you know. I loved it. The very moment I walked into that building, my life changed.
Same here.
I was only in England. I've been living in America for 23 years.
Mm.
I was only in England for 6 weeks.
And you came there.
And
wow.
I came to the Warp, and my life completely changed.
I bet it did.
And it was time to go back to America, and I called my friend in America and said, I'm dead. I'm not coming back. You're the executor of my will. Go to my house and get rid of everything. And 23 years worth of stuff. Everything.
Wow.
Gone.
What did you do with it all?
I don't know. Well, I know I did some of it because I went to visit him a while later, and he said, Brian, come look at this. And he took me up to his attic, and there in his attic was all the stuff that was in my basement of his house. He'd stored it all. And I went through a mixture of heaven and hell, because it was like, in a way I was really glad because I didn't have to sort it out. I was glad it was gone. And then, but I missed things like pictures of my kids and video of my kids and stuff like that. So it was great to see it all, and it was also, oh my God, no.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff was gone. I had several cars, you know, it's America, right? School bus, synthesizers,
Wow.
computers, tools, you know, 4-bedroom house just full of stuff.
And what do you do for Luminopolis? What's your role there?
Oh, I don't know, grumpy old man a lot of the time. You ask them. I always seem to be kind of like swimming upstream a little bit.
Okay.
You know, but you know, I think it takes, the thing about a collective organism is that it takes all sorts. It takes the wild and crazy like me, and it takes the very sober, steady, organised business head. You know, and on our own, we'll all go in the wrong direction probably, because you could be too organised, and you can be too crazy. But somehow,
as a unit, it works.
It's like a relationship, like male-female. You know, the woman is like protective, and the male is like go get it, and together they can bring up a healthy child. But if the man tries to do it on his own, he's just too much go get it and not enough protective. And if the woman tries to do it alone, she's too protective. So there's that balance. Yeah.
And what's your driving force for what you're doing? Why? What's the main reason
I think
for
it's.
doing what you do?
I think really, well, it's two things. It's as a parent, being really driven to make sure that the world stays wholesome for my kids to grow up in.
Right.
And they don't have to go to war. I mean, I think, you know, it's a tragedy to me that war's broken out again, you know, because I've worked my whole life for it. But the other thing that really moved me when I was about 12 years old, watching a movie that they were showing at school about the Bikini Atoll atomic nuclear bomb tests way back. They didn't really know what it would do.
Right.
And all these people got burned by radiation, and it was a real nightmare. A nightmare documentary. And I had this really shivery feeling, you know, of realizing that this was something that that none of us could get away from.
No.
You know, that there was nowhere to hide from this kind of warfare.
Yeah.
You know, and it put the shudders through me, and I was just like, yeah, I've got to do something about this. You know.
You mentioned something on Facebook the other day in response to my posting about boycotting the SE1 due to their security system.
Yeah.
Now, for the listeners, I take that back because I believe now that SE1 Club does serve its purpose, regardless of the ID system. And if you go back to earlier in the beginning of the interview, you remember Brian mentioned he has nothing to hide, so he doesn't mind the security system. And I believe that why should a security system bother you if you've got nothing to hide? So if you've got something to hide, then I understand. But if you haven't, then by all means, just keep going, because it is a good venue and it does serve its purpose. What you said was Let me think. It was in response to my post about going with it,
Yeah.
and just embracing it and using that to enhance what you're doing.
Yeah.
Do you back that up now?
Yeah, definitely. You know, because the revolution, you know, if you're into a revolution, isn't going to happen as, you know, in a basement somewhere. It's only going to happen when in the main street, in the mainstream. Yeah. And what I see in Luminopolis, you know, like I say, we're a collective and we all have different points of view. But what I see in Luminopolis is about evolving what is actually taking place in the mainstream, within the matrix. You know, and like I think the other thing I said to you was, you know, if these powers that we're so scared of, that we think have all this power over our lives to, you know, to rule us, if they really had that power, they wouldn't allow us to use the tools, you know, that they have control of to unmask their plot.
Which is what leads me to the question in hand. Was something that you said in your reply was that if they had that much power, they wouldn't allow us to spread this kind of media. You know, movies like Zeitgeist, Climatica, the esoteric agenda, and so on. You know, 9/11, loose change, and what have you. Do you not think that the very nature of the fact that they are allowing us to do it is part of the process of fear that they are trying to create, or supposedly trying to create this society of fear using terror and so on and so forth? Do you not think that just by them allowing us to carry on spreading this information, it's actually part of that process?
Well, we're doing
using us, like you say, against ourselves.
Yeah, we're doing the work for them.
Right.
You know, I don't believe it's that's joined up.
No.
You know, what I believe is there are cabals.
Right.
Of people
that are connected.
That have different agendas for the world. And we just seen one in America, right?
Yeah. You
know what I mean? That you know, took control.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't believe that it's that stitched up, that there is that global control happening. But what we are doing is creating an environment in which that could happen by spreading the fear and responding to the fear.
Okay.
You know, the whole conspiracy story. You know, nobody knows what the truth is, but we're chatting to each other about it all the time.
Yeah.
You know, it's fashionable. 9/11's an inside plot. And, you know, it's conspiracy this, 2012 that. You know, no one actually really knows what the truth is about this stuff. And what we're doing is talking ourselves into a reality. Yeah. So, you know, that concerns me is you know, like I see with the whole SE1 situations playing out right now, that we have a wonderful gig. Luminopolis is a wonderful gig, and each time we do one, many people's lives change.
Yeah.
Some people come for the first time, they get turned on to a whole new way of
thinking and new way of life.
And partying.
What are some of the guests you've had on Luminopolis? Some of the more prolific guests?
Well, I think probably recently the most notable one was Peter Josephs, who created the Zeitgeist movie. He was very interesting, very focused, very confident, you know, very extremely accomplished and committed to what he's doing.
And just for those of you who are listening, Zeitgeist is a film by Peter Joseph, who Brian just mentioned. It's a conspiratorial movie, basically encompassing pretty much the history of the modern world, going back to the times of Christ, even pre-Christ. It talks about religion, it talks about the history of money, it talks about the war on terror,